Thanks for joining us today for another edition of Life Sciences and Biotech CEOs. I'm Tim Doherty, your host, and our guest today is Tori Smith, the co-founder and CEO of Endiatx, a medical robotics company. Prior to launching Endiatx, Tori developed medical devices in the areas of endometrial ablation, atherectomy, therapeutic hypothermia, sleep apnea, vascular closure. Are there any more? Ultimately selling 3 companies to larger entities. Tori was trained as an aerospace engineer, but he's always had a deep interest in technology. But Tori's also a Renaissance man of sorts. In addition to his engineering endeavors, Tori is also the principal founder of the international arts collective known as Sextant, and his own art has been featured at the Smithsonian and now most recently at the party for the opening of the Tesla Gigafactory in Austin. It's a pleasure to have you with us today, Tori. So Endiatx is involved in the manufacture of tiny robotic pills equipped with a camera and capable of controlled movement inside the human body. How did you come up with that idea?
So I basically think this idea is relatively obvious. Our technology is basically just 4 little propellers, on electric motors. So you can sort of think of it as a quad pump jet, which really just borrows the control laws from the quadcopter world. This is a drone pill that you can pilot it around inside the stomach. But to me, the concept of tiny robots in the human body has always seemed obvious because you read about it in books, you see it in movies. It's a common theme in science fiction. Send in the nanobots to go fix the problem, right? And I just started to get kind of frustrated that that didn't seem to be real in the sense that there weren't products treating patients. And so eventually, when I saw Given Imaging, the makers of the first pill camera, back in 2014, they sold to Covidien for almost $1 billion. I realized, hey, I think maybe the time is now to see if we can take it to the next level.
Okay, so how does it really work? What happens?
Sure. The way it works is, let me take a big prototype here, right? This is our first prototype PoolBot. This would antagonize the swimming pools. We were very grateful to Fred Weber, who used to be the CTO over at AMD, for loaning us his pool early in the company. But the way we move around is we use these little propellers to push and pull through those lumens. And we're able to get most of the control that you would get out of, like a normal aircraft. So we can move forward and backward. We can turn left and right. We can pitch up and pitch down. And we can also spin rapidly on our axis in place. And when you combine all of those motions, you can basically do just about anything in a nice fluid volume. So we ask our patients, which up till now have been the founders, to drink a bunch of water and turn themselves into a water bag for a few minutes.
Okay. So I know that you were the first to swallow the pill. Right?
Yeah, go for it.
What were your initial expectations and how does that match with the ultimate reality?
Sure. I think with our first swallow, we just wanted to get any kind of a good signal, right? We knew our video quality would be very limited. We were like grayscale back then, like 48 pixels square, not very good frames per minute. And we're a little bit better now, but it's a long challenge, right? Working through all these performance metrics that we're trying to get to a clinical level. We're just looking for anything real, anything that would tell us resoundingly that we were onto something. And a couple of minutes into the swallow, as we're sort of driving around this sort of like grayscale moonscape of my stomach, we saw this piece of tissue that was sloughing off. And the neat thing about it was, even with our terrible resolution, you were definitely seeing something specific. You're like, that is a piece of tissue that's coming off. It looks kind of like a tapeworm. And we literally went like, whoa, as we were filming. And we realized this thing has legs, right? If we can tune this thing, if we can improve it incrementally, I think we're going to be, giving doctors a tool that is relevant to millions of patients every year.
So you designed it, and then you swallowed it yourself as a first test. And since now we iterate sort of forward a little bit, you've been working with Dr. Kambari at Mayo Clinic, Florida.
Sure. Well, I would say,
how did that relationship germinate?
Right. Well, first of all, I would say James designed it. I helped him tune it. Alex got the radio working, and Dan was the one who designed the electric circuits, right? So let's give these guys credit. But
right.
Getting from our living room here, I mean, First in Human was actually on this couch behind me. Getting to, from our living room in Silicon Valley to Jacksonville, Florida, to the Mayo Clinic, was basically just a lesson in really hardcore networking, right? We started reaching out to any gastroenterologist that would be willing to talk to us. And we were warned that the community has a reputation for being I don't think we need to speak down to it. I think we should simply say that gastroenterologists spend a huge amount of time and effort acquiring the skills and experiences they do to be able to do the job that they do. So when you come along with a disruptive concept, you have to, for your extraordinary claim, provide some extraordinary evidence, right? So the bar is high, and that's where the bar should be, frankly. But after a few years, we made friends with increasingly high-profile GIs. And I think that the primary credit would go to Dr. Hay, who runs King's College London's gastroenterology program. We became friends on LinkedIn. We had this sort of spiritual alignment. And it was Dr. Hay who introduced us to his close friend, Dr. Kambari. And that's when the relationship, really started to take hold in very early 2021.
Okay, so how many years has this start to present been going on?
Sure. So, I personally went full-time on the idea with my co-founder, James Erd, in, I would say, like October of 2018. Well, I guess I still had a job at that point, but James went full-time. I joined the Founder Institute at the very beginning of January 2019. I managed to get let go from my medical device job, and actually got some severance, which was very helpful. We incorporated the company in March of 2019, and we've been running ever since. So the company is officially just over 3 years old.
Okay, so that's a lot of progress, really, in 3 years.
I mean, we measure progress from, we try to look at tangible things, right? So like, here's my first notebook. It's called Endiotics One. And, I used to think the company logo was going to be a shield, this shield that's like a 3-part shield protecting human life. And the 3 parts of the shield would be endoscopy, diagnostics, and treatment. Crush that together, you've got Endiotics. No one liked that logo, so we don't use that today. But we basically walked into Founder Institute with, notebook sketches of how a robot might be able to move around in the human body. I think the submarine is in there. And we were pretty agnostic, right? Like, would it be an inchworm? Would it be like a nitinol mesh tube, or a series of piezoelectrically driven legs? I mean, we have no idea. For a while, my favorite idea was the thumper that would thump its way back and forth, but with these little jelly fingers selectively move in one direction. And we tried more than 30 different ideas before we finally realized, if you drink a bunch of water, you become a water bag in a part of your body that has an unmet need, the stomach. And we realized, let's make a product that can function in the stomach and affect patients' lives. And then let's see how far we can go with it elsewhere in the body.
So let's go off on a little tangent here for a minute and tell me about what the Founders Institute was like. Because I kind of picture it as, Shark Tank for technology.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a reasonable, guess, right? Founder Institute is perhaps the most, humanitarian, like it's maybe the most positive institution I've ever come across in my life. The founders, Adeo Resi, and the people he's brought together will let anyone in the world, literally now, because they're a global institution, including almost 100% virtual now. Anyone in the world can apply to Founder Institute, be screened for some basic criteria to see if it makes sense for them to actually join a cohort, and then learn how to rip the Band-Aid off, which is their comfort zone, which is their old life. Like I think a lot of us wish we were, 19 years old and dropping out of Stanford to launch Google, say. What do you do if you were in my position, 37 years old and depressed and kind of arrogant in a cubicle, it was such a naive existence I was leading. And yet Founder Institute helped me to feel like I could do this, and they showed me every step of the way what to do week by week. It's grueling though. They target about a 30% graduation rate, so it's not at all a walk in the park. But if you're committed to your idea, it's extremely inexpensive and open to anyone willing to apply.
So are there sort of groups that go through the process together, or are you doing
absolutely.
it sort of on your own at your own pace?
No, it's not at your own pace. No.
Okay.
Founder Institute is a boot camp for founders. Ryan Micheletti is one of the guys, along with Mike Superbeek, who really changed my life. They were part of my cohort, very high up at Founder Institute. Ryan said on the first day, this is a boot camp for founders. Everything is a test, right? Because the difference between a successful founder and a person dreaming about starting a company is that the successful founder is willing to be humiliated and terrified and fail publicly almost every day of their existence for years in a row. That's what a successful founder's journey looks like, is just sucking really bad and getting your butt kicked, but relentlessly being unwilling to give up, right? And so Founder Institute is unrelenting in their program. One of my homework assignments was quit my job or get fired by the next week. One of my homework assignments was incorporate the company by next week, or I will fail the program. And it's pass fail, right? You're either in or you're out. I think so one of the most fun homework assignments I had was raise $100,000 in the next 2 weeks or you fail the program.
Wow.
And we did it. We walked in with that notebook sketch, but by the end of the program, we had put together a little 3D printer using our own money, a couple $1,000. And we started making actual hardware. And while Poolbot is not glamorous, Poolbot was real, and it allowed us to raise $185,000 from our close personal professional network.
Wow. So you kind of asked me rhetorically on our first meeting, do you think that a moving eyeball inside the stomach has value? And so I turn that sort of back to you more directly. What do you think the implications of PillBot are for gastroenterology?
Sure. You know what? We're going to be really focused on what this first product can do and making it real, right? So like we said, we started with this ridiculous hardware. I had rooms full of investors laughing at us, not in a malicious way, but I would get on a stage and pitch micro robotics in the human body, and I'd hold this thing up. That's kind of funny. But the money that we raised with that was sufficient for us to start going to custom electronics. We left the Raspberry Pi hardware behind, but you can still see JB Weld and epoxy, right? It's not very glamorous. That got us down to thumb size. This helped us raise our next round. And then, here we are at sort of the fingertip scale now, and, we're in a whole different world. So what do we think we can do for the world of gastroenterology? What can we do for patients? Well, if you're a founder listening in on this, it's all about differentiation. It's all about being able to say, I have an idea that if I can pull off this idea with my team, it's going to change the game. You never want to found a company that's like, I'm a slightly better version of something else, or I'm going to take two other business models and I'm going to sort of combine them and take credit for it. Like, don't kid yourself. No one is going to be interested in talking to you. So what we're saying is, we think we can create a technology that will allow a doctor to actively and in real time look around inside your body, in this case, the stomach, completely decoupled from a hospital visit itself, right? This technology can be deployed to the patient's living room, and you just essentially hop on a Zoom call, much like this call, and just pair the thing, swallow it, and another video screen should pop up, and you get to see what the robot sees. And that ability for a doctor to look around inside a patient without months of hospital visits, which represents sort of the appropriate, but the unfortunate but necessary gatekeeping process that balances out the risks and costs of a traditional sedation-based hospital endoscopy. If we can move that 10 to 15 minutes of doctor time right to the beginning of the process in the patient's living room, then we're really changing the game. We could drastically lower the cost to a typical patient and really drastically open up access to patients all around the world.
So do you think that the PillBot might impact medicine in the underdeveloped world?
That's one of the most exciting areas here, right? I was blown away when Founder Institute Crimea River forced me to do market research. I'm very much what many would call a technologist. I think things are cool and I chase those things because it's fun to work on. I think I'm just fortunate that we happen to have potential product market fit here. I'm not worried about the market. I'm worried about getting the product to work well enough to address that market. But our research showed us that patients in the developing world will often have to take trains and buses and even airplanes to travel hundreds of miles to an endoscopy clinic, just so that a doctor can have 10 minutes to look around visually inside their stomach. And, we're basically making a technology here. Let me hold up our entire hardware as it stands today. Okay, here we go. So this is the system. The system is the PillBot itself, a little USB dongle, and a smartphone. And it could be a laptop too, but basically that's what it looks like. This right now is about $45. We'd like to get the disposable part of the system down to about $25 to build it. And then, we can figure out how much it makes sense to sell it for in a typical market. In the US market, a passive pill camera retails for $500. So if I can build it for 25, sell it for 500 here in the US, those are great unit economics. But let's imagine we're in a refugee camp in sub-Saharan Africa, okay? I'm sure we can sell it for much less there. There's still plenty of money we can make. But the bottom line is, if you can get this device, this little cheap packaged device, to that refugee camp, and like a suitcase of our product could treat hundreds of patients, right? Then the best doctor in the world could have a look inside that patient and figure out what's going on. But we should add that many of the doctors we've spoken to in the developing world have asked us to make sure that while they love the data analytics and while they love the concept of a cloud-based control platform for it, they've all said one thing: please keep near-field control active under all circumstances. So if the internet's down, let a local doctor be able to treat that patient directly as well, which was a very important thing for us to learn. And we have some of the best doctors in the world across the world. So there's no requirement that we remove the doctor from the situation. But with that being said, I sort of see this as like the ultimate hardcore telemedicine.
Wow. Okay, so I know there are a couple of competitors. I know that Medtronic is one. How does PillBot differ from other competitors' offerings?
Sure. So I'd like to give credit to our most direct competitors. This company would be called Onx Robotica. They're based out of China, but they are FDA cleared in the United States. I think their headquarters is in Dallas. I'm kind of hoping to see them at DDW, the upcoming GI conference, if possible. These folks are doing amazing work in the human stomach. And what they do is they take a traditional pill camera platform and they put a magnet inside it. And this thing now responds to magnetic fields. And their product is the magnetic pill camera in concert with a piece of capital equipment that you could sort of think of as like the baby brother of an MRI machine. This is not a multi-million-dollar machine. I think it's like 100,000 or maybe a little bit more than that.
Okay.
But the bottom line is they have a patient lie in a magnetic machine, and by manipulating powerful external magnetic fields, they induce motion and basically create the same thing we're trying to create, the moving eyeball in the stomach. And in their clinical trial where they gained FDA clearance, more than 90% of the patients who went through, who had both the magnetic capsule and a normal endoscopy, more than 90% said we absolutely prefer not to have tubes jammed into our sedated bodies, right?
I'm surprised 10% didn't.
But I don't know if it was 5% or 10%, so I'm saying more than 90%. So Onx Robotica is really knocking it out of the park. And rather than be worried about this, we need to give them full credit for an amazing achievement. That particular technology does mean that the patient has to be in the hospital to receive the treatment, right? So that's kind of the big thing, is that there's a machine that you need to get on a wait list to get into that machine. And that's where on the differentiation side, I think that Endiatx stands to go address lots of patients. We can go get some market share for ourselves. That's great. But bear in mind, the global endoscopy devices market throughout the human body is a $67 billion market. The GI tract alone, where we are all beginning, but not where we want to end, that's a $9 billion market. We think we need as many players as possible active in this space in order to meet the patient need that's out there. Because COVID was terrible for the world of gastroenterology, because millions of procedures were simply delayed or canceled because the physical doctor-patient contact wasn't appropriate when you balanced out the risks, right? So basically, thank you, Onx Robotica, thank you, Navicam, which is their product, because that actually does give us a good predicate to get through FDA quickly. But you mentioned Medtronic. Medtronic, we actually kind of feel like Medtronic are a bit more adjacent to us. Medtronic currently own the PillCam product line. This is what I'm holding right here. That started in 1997 in Israel with Given Imaging. 2001, they got FDA clearance. 2014, they sell to Covidien, $860 million. We touched on that earlier. And then Medtronic bought Covidien in 2015. So the world of passive pill cameras and the world of active endoscopes represent those two different markets, right? GI tract and endoscopy devices market, that's like, what, $9 billion. Passive pill camera market's about 500 million. And the reason for that disparity is that if you ask a gastroenterologist how frequently they can use a pill camera, unfortunately, the result that comes back is passive pill cameras are about a 1% to 3% niche use product. Doctors need the ability to move around and look and do things. Doctors need to be able to do their jobs, right? All of their training, all of those years of medical school and residency force them to need to look around because, everyone wants to go find the disease. That's what you think. The layperson thinks, oh, we're going to go find the disease. But 80% of the time or more, you find nothing. It's rare that you find a physical disease. What they are terrified about is that they are missing the disease. The concept of a false negative is the worst possible thing. That's the thing that we're all scared of. And that's where active devices that actually go move around and do things have access to a much larger market. So for us, it's about 6 to 8 million patients in the US every year getting upper endoscopy. we would like to speak with that patient population and maybe pull a substantial number of them, out of the healthcare system, out of the hospital system specifically, and go have a look at them in their living rooms.
The question that comes to my mind is that I wasn't aware of. You said that the passive camera market's about 500. Why does a company like Medtronic, I think it's around, give or take, $140 billion company? Why do they bother with 500 million?
Well, Medtronic is not in any case dominated by passive pill cameras. That's just one of many
Right.
product lines. And we need to give some credit to Medtronic here, because as much as Onx Robotica has done with moving pill cameras, Jeff Martha partnered with Amazon, and Medtronic is now doing FDA cleared home delivery of passive pill cameras. And so basically, they have pioneered using this platform where it makes most sense. So basically, a patient will qualify for the passive pill, even if it's a 1 to 3% use case. That's a lot of patients in the U.S. And Amazon will get the pill to their house. They'll swallow it under appropriate direction, and then Amazon Web Services is handling the data that comes out of it. And so this is amazing. They've recently been FDA cleared. And so again, that's another very useful predicate for us when we
Right.
start to go through FDA ourselves. And so let's not denigrate anyone here. But basically, Medtronic's done a huge accomplishment getting home swallowing of electronics approved by FDA.
Right.
They're also doing amazing work with artificial intelligence, getting more information out of that stream of pictures that comes out of the passive pill camera. And we should expect to see that sort of increase the clinical use profile. But with Endiotics, look, we're a bunch of science fiction geeks that want to make tiny robotic surgeons. I mean, come on, our dream here is not to be a better pill camera. Our dream is to put more than one camera on it, pointed in the same direction, and boom, just, wow, I'm in a giant stomach. This is cool. Wherever I point my head, the camera, the robot's propulsion system points the robot, and holy cow, I have surgical robot arms now. Let's swim over. Let's go let's go kill cancer right where it lives. We feel that this concept of, it's almost like a magic school bus, right? If we can create this motion platform, first as a moving eyeball, but then as a platform to do surgery, and then as an ever smaller platform that can do microsurgery. Maybe we can go up the bile duct. Maybe we can have a look at the pancreas. Maybe we can leave the GI tract and go into places like the heart and the brain. I think it's going to be a really exciting world out there. And I think we're going to need a lot of help. We're going to need competing companies. We're going to need lots of new ideas. We're going to need the latest in manufacturing and energy. But this is a whole new universe, I think, that we're starting to open up. And we're just kind of proud to be relevant right now. This is exciting.
What do you think is the initial business opportunity?
Oh, very simple.
How do you see it?
We touched on 6 to 8 million upper endoscopies in the US each year. We are trying to make a moving eyeball in the stomach that is a useful enough tool for a GI like Dr. Kumbari, where for say 25 to 55, say 50% of their patients, it's relevant, right? Based on the patient's symptoms and any history of contraindications. I think this device could be relevant to as much as 50% of the population, potentially even more, right? And basically, if we can take that patient population and let's just draw a big circle around first symptoms to emergency room, to primary care, to referral, to GI, to find the screening, to finally getting your upper endoscopy, whatever that costs the patient and whatever that costs the healthcare system, the insurance system, and whatever risk that put into the hospital system of all that physical contact, which I think, we're acutely aware of, draw a circle around that, put some kind of a number on it, and then say, hey, for a lot of you folks, You want to drink some water and swallow a pill in your living room instead of doing all of that? I think that's a big business opportunity.
What does a traditional endoscopy cost?
It's super cheap, right? If you look at the code, it's usually like $1,700. But have you ever been to the hospital and gotten a $1,700 bill? Usually it's like, no. Let's just call BS right there, right? We all know the reality. If you're going to the hospital 6 times and getting bounced around the system, if you want to go ahead and add up all those bills, be my guest. Okay.
Right.
But the reality is upper endoscopies are difficult to get to. Ask your friends what they're, ask your friends with Crohn's or celiacs or any kind of GI issue. So how satisfying and fun was your journey through our healthcare system to get to an upper endoscopy? And unfortunately, you're going to hear, this is the worst thing I've ever done. I've heard 6 visits, I've heard 3 visits. My sister Flora is a nurse with excellent healthcare. She had terrible bellyache, and at 4 visits in, they were finally saying, maybe you qualify for an upper endoscopy. Her symptoms were gone months before she ever even qualified to get the procedure that's going to go find nothing. And the whole healthcare system just wasted tens of thousands of dollars because it's not appropriate to jam a tube into your sedated body just because you have a bellyache. That's the problem. There's no boogeyman here. There's no one bad player here that's making it difficult for this. It's just that our technology doesn't yet make it appropriate to give a gastroenterologist that look inside you every time your belly hurts. We think we can change that, right? Our goal for a typical patient is to make their cost, or for a typical healthcare provider, like an insurance company, I want to cut the cost to get to that upper by about an order of magnitude. And I want to increase the access to this procedure by about an order of magnitude, right? So for a doctor who's doing patients, they make most of their money treating patients, not hurting them through the hospital system. So I'd actually like to increase the amount of money a doctor can earn by virtue of increasing the number of patients they can treat. For the health insurance company, for a given name on a list, I want that name to get the healthcare situation resolved, get them out of the hospital system, stop the payouts for much less money, right? I think health insurance companies should love us. I think doctors should love us. I think the clinics those doctors work for that are also tied to that cash flow based on number of patients, I think they should love us. And most importantly, I think a typical patient should go from, well, this cost someone a lot of money, or maybe I lost my house, to, wow, that was just fast and cheap and kind of fun. I got to go on a Zoom call with my doctor, and for the first time ever, an unsedated patient, which, typically your patient in the US is fully sedated, you get to be fully sober and cognizant and awake while your doctor looks around inside your stomach. And so think about what that means from a bedside manner sort of standard of care, right? Usually patients are sort of groggy, recovering from sedation, while a doctor is trying to tell them what they just found, and then they run off. And then later you get like a report that you don't understand. And you feel a little out of sync with the healthcare system. That's no one's fault, right? It's just that's what technology as of today gives us. I want to change that, right? I want you to be like, wow, doc, my belly hurts. Let's ask you some questions about diverticulitis. And if you qualify, quickly answer it and move on.
But in fact, don't you need, in order to attain that vision, you need a healthcare system that is geared toward results rather than multiple procedures to get paid? Right? Because what you're doing is limiting the number of procedures. You no longer need 4 trips to the hospital before you are qualified for an upper endoscopy. You could do it in one the first day. It's $500. Am I right? Or
so tell me your concern. Let's dig into it.
So let's say currently we have a system which is based upon, well, Dr. A sends you to Dr. B, who sends you to Dr. C, and they all get paid. Right?
Sure.
if Dr. A can just say, well, take this pill and we'll find out what's going on there, there's no need for Dr. B and C. It's cheaper to the system. The insurance company likes it, but the employer of Dr. B and C may not.
These are very good questions, right? In all the medical devices I've ever worked on, like this is 9 years of my life. This is the Phoenix atherectomy system. It cuts plaque out of arteries. Think of it like a roto-rooter.
Okay, yeah.
We would always get asked similar questions every time you bring a new technology in and you start testing it out. Oh no, what if you disrupt the system? I've actually found that the healthcare system, this is international, to be extremely interested in any new technology that can do the job better or safer or faster. I've never met anyone in our system that wasn't eager to play with the shiny new thing. In fact, when we were doing our cadaver study, we had doctors scrubbing up and banging on the door and, running in and be like, I heard the rumor. Now you just give me that Xbox controller right now. Just give it to me. People want to play with the thing if it's gonna be a better tool. I mean, it's kind of like if you walked into a, here's a good analogy. Let's look at a raceway. A typical race day. You've got a bunch of race cars, and you've got all the pit crews, and you've got the announcers. Okay, but let's say it's 1955. And you go in there with like a McLaren F1 or something from like the mid 90s, and you just put that on the track. Do you think people are going to scoff at you? No, like every single person in that ecosystem is going to want to get their hands on it. So I don't have like the full metrics for exactly what will happen when we go to market with possibly the most disruptive piece of medical technology since penicillin. I'm going to let the bean counters figure that out because we have very limited cycles on this team. We need to really focus on making this thing work because, as exciting as this is now, and as exciting as it is that we're, things are looking very good on the funding side for us right now. We are going to get our butts kicked over the next 3 months, turning this from a technology demonstrator that once in a while gives you one of those whoa moments. I call this like a 5 to 10% product right now. We need to cross that hurdle and go to, honestly, this thing works 90+% of the time or better, right? We have our work completely cut out for us making this technology work the way we want it to work. We'll let someone else figure out exactly what the impact is going to, look at.
What's the process for that then?
To make it work?
Well, yes, to go to clinicals, bring it to market, all that sort of thing. How do you envision?
So basically, the next 3 months, we did our kickoff meeting just a few days ago and recorded it. And basically, the next 3 months is just going to be a gnarly R&D sprint. We have a battery in here that's got stainless steel case, and that stainless steel casing is just about equal to the deficit in buoyancy that we are experiencing right now. So I hold this thing up. This represents about as small as we can make it, but check out this bad boy. This one in this hand is one that we actually swallowed a few weeks ago. And to get it to float, I had to cut some of the motors out. I bleached this thing, but let's just say my work gets a little weird sometimes. We had to drop some motors. Notice how we had to put a big air gap in there for buoyancy. This thing was like, I swallowed it, but it's fatter and longer than our clinical product is intended to be. It was like stuck here.
I think I would be afraid to swallow it.
Oh yeah, right. That was a rough pill to swallow. But while that thing was in my stomach, we got 375 megabytes out of it. And you realize, like, even with this like infantile like technology, this thing that really needs a lot of improvements, we are creating like maybe the world's stickiest data set, and we're doing it in the living room setting. I mean, the sheer power of what we can do over time as we get all of this data worked through. I'm going to say some alphabet soup here, so I apologize. A little bit of AI, a little bit of ML, right? The data analytics that we can do with this is going to be incredible, right? So anyways, next couple of months, yeah, we're looking for smaller motors, lighter batteries. We need to put a fisheye lens on this thing, put some optical filters. To that end, I've been making friends with people that are experts in the field of optics. And basically, in a few months' time, I'd like to be able to go back to Dr. Kumbari and basically say, okay, we think we have the next thing. Let's do either a cadaver study or maybe a limited human trial under an IRB, an institutional review board, and see what we come up with. And we're going to do that iterative loop as many times as needed to yield something where the doctors say, I need this in my clinic now, right? Our performance requirements are not really so much like any given number, like this many frames per second or this resolution or this size. No, we'll know we have the right thing when doctors are screaming for it, when they are furious that they don't have access to it commercially. At that moment in time, that's when we will, basically raise our Series A and go through FDA.
Okay, so thus far, my understanding is you raised about $1 million from family, friends, angels, that sort of thing.
Venture capitalists as well.
And then another $1.8 million from VCs?
So current situation, and I need to be kind of careful because SEC asks us not to do what's called a general solicitation, which basically would be an inappropriate call for investors.
Right.
So what I can say is that we've in past rounds closed out more than $1 million, just over $1 million, to go from the notebook sketches I showed you earlier to, I think we're up to 24 robots that we've sent through our own bodies, multiple patents filed, one granted, a cadaver study, which we're very grateful for. So that's what we did with $1 million. Our seed round is essentially closed out. We're bringing in a total of $3 million to help us go from a tech demonstrator to a minimum viable product. And now I have a very interesting task in front of me, which is, can I take a pile of $3 million and a company, worth about 15 million, by the term sheet? Can I take $3 million and build a $100 million company with it? Can I make this product work? That's now what I'm facing. And it's funny because I spent my entire career wishing, dreaming that one day I would be sitting in this situation, that we've gotten funding, that we have a team, that we have this device. And here, now that those wishes have been granted, Tim, it's terrifying. This is an incredible moment in the life of this company, and the weight and of the pressure that we're feeling right now is pretty intense, and that there's no other place we'd rather be. But this is a really exciting time.
Well, you mentioned to me when we first talked, Tori, that you had kind of a financially challenging situation growing up. And now, you're sitting as the CEO of a company that may be worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 million. And, going up from there. Are there ways in which that challenging youth has taught you how to go through this process?
Absolutely. So this is it seems surreal, and I describe myself as a lowercase CEO. I'll be a real CEO when we treat a patient. Okay. That's when it'll be real. But I have to think of it as real now because enough people have put their life savings into this or making big bets on us, place big bets on us, that I can't ever take this anything but seriously. So yes, I will take that mantle. But it's surreal, right? Because I still remember when I was young, my dad built a little dirt floor cabin in the eastern Sierra Nevadas. He delivered me in that cabin. There was no doctor. Then he hosed my mother off with spring water and ditched her to go hang gliding. And she hitchhiked down to town and weighed me in the produce aisle. She tells me I was about 6 pounds. But I was raised, by hang gliding hippies in the mountains, traveling throughout Mexico and Central America. And it was kind of a different perspective on things. And we didn't always have a home. There were times when my family was living in a stand of trees north of Santa Cruz, California. And, like I would wake up in my sleeping bag, with a highway patrol officer, like rapping on the window, like, you can't be here. And that was kind of normal to me, right? And I didn't understand until later that wasn't normal for everyone else. Entering public school was a bit of a culture shock, because I found that a lot of the ideals that my parents espoused weren't necessarily espoused by the typical kids on the playground, but that's going to be normal for most kids. If it was all peace and love at home, the Japanese proverb of the nail that sticks out gets hammered down is definitely something that's
wow. I hadn't heard that one before, but
that's a good one, right?
Yeah.
I think what I got out of that background, though, is just my own definition of what a crisis is, right? Because as a kid, my version of a crisis was you're in Nicaragua and your jalopy just broke down when you were trying to ford a river, and the water's coming up through the floorboards and the car's stuck in the middle of the river. And dad is saying, all right, you know what? We're not going to make it across. Get your backpack, get your little brother, get his backpack. I want you to go to the far side of the river. Why don't you get some wood, make camp, put the tent up, start a fire. I'll be back in a couple hours. I'm going to hitchhike back to the town we saw back there. I'm going to get some buddies, and we'll have this sorted in the morning. That was just kind of normal, right? And so when I see founders quitting on their companies because things got difficult or because the 50th investor has turned them down, like, understand, we've been rejected by more than 300 venture capitalists so far. And, something like 5 have said yes to us. That's more than 1% hit rate. We're actually doing pretty good on that. Getting into Harvard is something like a 5% hit rate. Fundraising is around 1%, right? So having the ability to just define for yourself what is Redline is very important, because it's from my cold, dead hands that someone's going to pull this dream, right? Like, I will be making these robots under an overpass with my co-founder, James, all right, cooking bacon around a campfire and playing with little sticks and glue. One way or another, we've gotten down to zero. We've never gone insolvent and we've never bounced a check. That's very important to us. But we've taken this company down to nearly zero cash numerous times. Poor James and I, James, we've skipped payroll so many times during COVID. But rather than complain and give up because of COVID, we decided to say that COVID gives us a license to raise money from anyone, anywhere, because of Zoom calls, right? You used to only raise money in your area. COVID ended that. COVID also made it really clear that telemedicine probably has value. And Endiatx is never going to brand itself as a COVID company. That's cheap. We're not going to do that. But we are grateful for the focus that the world puts on the value of telemedicine. And also, look, you don't have to have millions of dollars to show people that you can make real things and turn a little bit of money into a little bit more traction. So yeah, you have to take whatever, darkness or pain or fear you have, and you just have to become comfortable with it. Like, I'm not fearless. I'm terrified almost every day. I'm scared. I feel nauseated. Sometimes I'll start meetings and my hands will be shaking, right? That's normal, right? You have to just be willing to be uncomfortable and afraid, because that's where all the fun stuff is found.
Right. I think you mentioned one time that, you just told me, many investors were kind of put off by sort of your unconventional spirit. I guess they hadn't thought of, the richest man in the world at that point, and how lucky they would have been to have invested in Tesla 20 years ago or whatever it was.
Sure.
But is there a challenging or an especially fun story about the capital raise process that you can share with us?
I would say, this kind of comes back to Founder Institute. I did I went into Founder Institute and was able to benefit from their program, and then my team was able to kind of rally around that. But Founder Institute relentlessly supports their founder network, and so I was doing an online pitch. This was in, I think, like November 2019, and this awesome guy named Ariel Gomez Ortigosa from Lantana Biosoft called me up and he said, "Hey, I saw your pitch. I'm based in León and Guanajuato, but I'm in Berkeley. Do you want to meet?" And so I drove over there, and I think what I had at that time were, this robot and parts of this robot.
Okay.
And we sat down, we had coffee, and it was amazing because for the first time, a badass VC wasn't asking me any questions on like market size or go-to-market strategy. He literally was like, "Let me get my hands on that little robot I saw," right? He got it. We understood. And he's like, "This is the coolest thing I've seen in a long time. I'm very interested in this. And you know what? I don't even have the money in the company account. We're still fundraising, right? VCs are fundraising just like founders are fundraising." Right. But he said, "Why don't you fly down to Guanajuato and pitch my LP candidates in Spanish?" And so thank you, Dad. Thank you, Mom, for taking me to Nicaragua, right? For leaving me on blankets in Guatemala City, right? And, I would make little figurines and sell them to gringo tourists, even though I was a gringo. Because I got on a Volaris flight and I flew down there and I pitched in somewhat mangled Spanish. It's been a little while. And we made friends. And later that year, Lantana made a big commitment to us, which turned into money in our seed round money in our angel round, and then, commitments to our seed round as well. And Ariel and I have become really fast friends. And that could never have happened without this global network with the Founder Institute, without a venture capitalist actually looking for frontier level technology and being willing to just meet the founder in person and get under the hood. Let's open the kimono and see what's actually there. And then with our willingness to just jump on a flight sight unseen, knowing the 1% hit rate, right? When I got on that flight, I was expecting it to turn into nothing and to absorb a little bit of flack for going on a wild boondoggle like that. But in the end, that was a good one. The other one would probably be building one of the world's largest Tesla coils at Burning Man with my founding team years before Endiatx, and then years later having Tesla call us up and say, Elon actually asked for the big Tesla coil from Burning Man for the cyber rodeo, and we just said to him, like, "Look, we don't, maybe we can do an expense report at the end, but we don't make our money with Tesla coils, right? Tesla coils are a thing that we do to unite us and to sort of push the limits of what we can do with electrical engineering and the mechanical engineering that backs that up. We would be honored to attend and participate simply to be among like-minded people." And, so we drove across the country. That was like a 3-day drive to haul the Tesla coil out. And being able to see the Giga Texas factory and tour it and, meet some of the people who are making that possible at the highest levels was pretty incredible. And from that, we've been able to make some really cool connections. And, like I said, I think the company has a bright future. But the bottom line is sometimes you have an opportunity to step out into the unknown. And I think hauling a giant Tesla coil to Texas would be one of those. We arrived at the Cambria Hotel in Austin, Texas, with $165 in the bank account. All right. That's what commitment means to us. We decided we would be there, right? So we decided to do it, even though it was at the extreme of what was possible, right? It was an absolutely extremely unlikely thing for us to do something like that. But we knew we needed to be there because we had friends that we needed to make, right?
And so did you get to meet Elon?
I wanted to meet Elon, but I was feeling a little self-conscious because we're losing about 20 to 30% on that Tesla coil right now in terms of like the voltage up top. I don't know why, but it's not as angry as it should be. And I was just like, I don't know. I don't want to push for that if I'm bringing sort of a wimpy version of my Tesla coil. But we did have some interesting conversations with some folks there. There might be an opportunity to install a permanent one. And again, what we say is, look, this is not how we make our money. We're just honored to be friends with people like this, because what I was able to say consistently to some of the inner circle was just thanks to the work done by the teams over at Tesla and SpaceX. I don't think anyone can look me square in the face and tell me that my dream of micro-robotic surgeons in the human body is impossible. Because all I have to do is say, well, what would you have said to Elon three years before he landed that rocket? Him and Gwynn and the entire SpaceX team, right? What I love about Elon is he knows the value of the team he's built. He's a figurehead, but no one's going to say he did that alone. This is the work of inspired teams, for sure.
Well, you've got some interesting colleagues at and they've got interesting backgrounds. Tell us about them and how you came together and what their contributions have been. You mentioned James, your co-founder.
Sure. Well, my phone that just rang would be Dr. Alex Lubke. He's known as Maverick in certain circles.
Maverick.
And he's been a mentor to me for quite some time. We've been working very closely for more than 8 years, I believe it is. Alex, or Dr. Lubke, or Maverick, he's from the Google X world. He's been high up in the Moonshot Factory for many years, and he's our chairman and currently acting CTO, managing our deep tech stack. James Erd, his nickname is Heavy Metal, and the reason for that is that James has more than 60,000 pounds of machine tools that he and I have collected in our Oakland warehouse. Like, when I say we make robots, I mean, dude, that orange box over there is where we 3D print them. And, we've got the warehouse in Oakland where we machine the polycarbonate nose cones. We're down to 178 microns on the wall thickness of that polycarb, which is, that's about 7/1000 of an inch, about 2 sheets of paper. It's a very, very thin nose cone. When people say hardware is hard, they don't have James Erd and his arsenal of equipment and his lifetime of knowledge doing crazy, weird stuff. I feel that having a best friend like James, me as more of an aero or a mechanical style engineer, him as the gnarliest machinist you ever saw. You put us together and you have a superhero. You tear us apart and you have 2 lonely guys, right? That's how our team works, is together we are superheroes. And then, I have to say, for our CTO emeritus, our co-founder, Dan Moyer, Dan is the electrical engineering and computer engineering genius who worked with us to envision how you would stuff that much electronics, off-the-shelf electronics, into a package this small. Dan received an offer from Worcester Polytechnic to go pursue his PhD in robotics, which is where he is now. But rumor has it he might spend some time at the Giga Texas site this summer. So I think as the designer of that giant Tesla coil, I think his skills might be needed over the summer break. So that's your technical team. But then on the medical side, we wouldn't be anywhere. We'd be sitting on my living room couch, espousing our robot pills to no one if it wasn't for the doctors involved, right? So, number one on the list, we have to say Dr. Kumbari. He is the youngest chief of gastroenterology at Mayo Clinic by more than 20 years. Ever.
Wow.
This guy is 39 years old. Last time I checked, maybe he's had a birthday. He's younger than I am. And he is just relentlessly, fiercely passionate about advancing the state of the art for the technology that can help his patients, right? He told us that he had seen a seminar years ago where people showed the dream of tiny robots in the body. And when we became friends, he said, you know what? I think this is the chance. This is our chance together to make this thing real. And that's why being such close friends with him has been huge. Dr. Hay out of King's College London, they represent, after Johns Hopkins, the #3 institution in the world after Mayo. And this depends on what list you go. These
Right.
are top institutions. Boo Hussein Hay, Dr. Hay. Boo has just been the warmest, kindest presence. He was the first premier level gastroenterologist to really believe in us and to start putting his own career and his own name and reputation on the line for this dream. And that's why he's intimately involved with us as well. And then finally, I'm sorry to say it, but we have a bit of a knucklehead doctor on the team as well. Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Bonas is an ER doc, Johns Hopkins shock trauma. Now he's at Kaiser Oakland. He's a flight surgeon with the 144th. The same folks that deployed over to Ukraine over the last number of years and trained up those Ukrainian pilots who are doing so well now. The 144th is the ones that trained him. Ben's their flight surgeon, and that knucklehead is my older brother. And
okay.
Once in a while, I asked him why he chose the 144th, because they're in Fresno and we're in the Bay Area. Because he could have gone to Moffett, and he whispered to me, he's like, Tori, Fresno has F-15s. Those have 2 seats. So he will text me, look up, mofo, and I'll look up and he'll just tear over an F-15. And apparently they call him self-loading baggage, but he's a private pilot and they give him stick time from the back seat. Apparently,
really?
Yeah,
Wow.
apparently they were doing fighter maneuvers over Big Sur recently. They hit the tanker 5 times, and this guy is just having the time of his life. So what we're trying to do with Dr. Bonas, or Ben, my big brother, is we're trying to take this technology beyond just the world of gastroenterology, right? We think this is appropriate for forward deployed medicine, for refugee camps, for military bases. We think it's appropriate for the developing world. We also think it's appropriate for this new place, space medicine. And so I'm actually working pretty hard to try to get people to test these robots on one of the inspiration missions. I'm trying very hard to get in touch with Jared Isaacman, who's been working with St. Jude, because Jared says that he wants to expand the St. Jude mission using telemedicine. He wants to take what St. Jude does for children in their hospitals all around the world. It's this beautiful vision. Like, Jared wants to help kids all around the world, and he wants to do it using telemedicine. And so that's kind of where we want to meet people like that and show them that these inexpensive little robot pills can potentially be this piercing, strong telemedicine that can sort of push through all the funk that people have experienced, right? I really think, as we start to close out, I had a chance to speak briefly with Linda Avey from 23andMe when we were at the Cyber Rodeo. And Linda basically looked me in the eyes and said that her vision is to use technology, biotechnology, medical technology, to basically create like a fundamentally new deal for the human population in this next century, right? Like, if we look back 100 years, we look at a lot of scarcity defined politics. We look at different populations in conflict with each other. We look at different economic and social classes in conflict with each other. I think if we look forward 100 years, we might be building a very different global society. There is a concept of abundance that Peter Diamandis from XPRIZE speaks to frequently that is pretty exciting. I think if we work together, we can probably use technology and other things to make an awesome world, right? Like, I'm really excited to be doing this. And honestly, I think for 15 minutes, people might think we're pretty cool with this technology. Maybe for a couple of years, if we're lucky, we'll be relevant, and you'll think of Endiotics and the founders as these great people. But honestly, if we fast forward just 5 or 10 years, I think you're going to start to see this look like an obvious thing and then a relic, right? As we get smaller and smaller. My goal is to become a dinosaur as quickly as possible, so I can sort of step out of the way, let some other people take the limelight, fund them, encourage them, and keep that progress going forward.
Well, the really exciting thing, I think, is that just take healthcare. Healthcare is 20% of GDP. And as we said earlier in our conversation, there's a lot of waste, unnecessary waste in the system. And to the extent that we can limit that or get rid of it completely, think about how many dollars are freed up to do other things.
It's dollars and it's time.
Right.
Dollars, time, and health and lifespan, right? Some of the patients that we interviewed, people I won't name, but close friends, 6 visits to the hospital, 12 months of their life. And she basically spent 12 months of her life in terrible gastric distress, unable to really function professionally, artistically. She does amazing professional work, artistic work. She lost a year because the current state of healthcare wasn't able to diagnose her with gastritis and get that not cured but effectively managed.
Right.
We think for patients like that, all that cost and all that wasted time and all those wasted heartbeats, we think we can make rapid early diagnoses, right? I don't think we need to make a device that truly replaces the endoscope. Not yet. We need to make a device that rapidly diagnoses, say, like 80% of the issues, or gives those negative results, so you can then move on to the next decision tree. And then say that 15 to 20% of patients where you do find something, well, let's find it months or even years earlier, and then let's skip all the hoopla. Let's swallow the robot pill, be like, ooh, oh, that does look bad. I do want a sample of that. You're getting an endoscopy tomorrow, right? And skip all that funk, right? And I think if you just look at the wasted dollars, there's a huge opportunity. But it goes beyond that when we look at the human factors.
So let's talk about something, kind of end on a really fun note. How does an aerospace engineer end up with art at the Smithsonian? How does that happen?
It's pretty humble. The piece of art is just a map. It's a map of the city of Burning Man, Black Rock City. And I did that piece of jewelry out of like a water jet copper and stainless steel. Did some machining. Got into like iris mechanisms.
Okay.
What I do is I take things that are really intimidating to me because I'm scared of so many things. This map of the city of Burning Man, it's a planetary gearbox. It's basically like a geared toy.
Yeah.
And the reason that I got into making handheld planetary gearboxes is that I'm an engineer, and I was literally intimidated by planetary gears. It was like gears within gears and suns and planets and internal gears. It was just, I was afraid of them. For some reason, I was just having trouble getting it. And when I discovered a makerspace, it was called Tech Shop at the time, I realized I could go in and laser cut and start playing with the things that freak me out. And just over time, you start to get this intuitive grasp, lean into the thing that scares you. And eventually you make friends with it. And so I ended up making jewelry. I ended up getting dragged to Burning Man. It was the last place I wanted to go because I felt like I had been sort of raised in Burning Man. And so I was actually trying to go in the opposite direction. But when my friend Gene dragged me to Burning Man, I started to see the scale of the art and the scale of the ambition. That would be Dr. Lubke trying to ring in. And I started to realize, this is actually relevant. This is something I would like to do. Basically, let's see how far we can push it. And pretty quickly, we founded a theme camp. We started building giant Tesla coils. And, from there on out, we got invited to the Smithsonian. And most of our first investors here at Endiotix were people that saw our work out on Playa.
Really? Well, that's just the whole thing is fascinating. You're fascinating, Tori, from the standpoint of here's an aerospace engineer who's learned how to commandeer his fears and redirect them to all of these very valuable pursuits. It's why we do the podcast.
Yeah.
And I thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much, Tim. I really appreciate it.
Great. Well, I look forward to hearing more about your journey and the journey of Pillbot toward success. Thanks, Tori. Thanks for tuning in to the Life Sciences and Biotech Podcast. We'll see you in the next episode. The information contained in this website and podcast are purely informational and not considered investment recommendations. Tim Doherty's participation in Biotech Insights is separate and apart from his role as an investment advisor representative. Nothing contained herein can be construed as a recommendation or endorsement of any of the companies discussed. Tim Doherty also has no financial affiliation with any of the companies mentioned in this communication. Tim Doherty makes no representation that the information contained in this material is accurate and is under no obligation to update this information as changes occur.